listening to Driving Law, a podcast by Kyla Lee about all things related to the rules of the road.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Driving Law with Kyla Lee. Kyla Lee is not here today. It's Paul Doroshenko, her normal guest, who is acting as the host. Hi. And with me is somebody I wanted to have on the podcast many times. I'm kind of surprised, actually, that Kyla didn't have him on the podcast, John Collins. So John is there. Hi, John. John is an attorney in Arkansas. He is basically sort of, in many respects, the Kyla Lee of Arkansas. He's the one person that everybody goes to when they've got a DUI case. He's a former police officer. Then he became a prosecutor. Then he became a DUI lawyer, and now he has a little bit of a turnaround because he teaches police how to conduct proper impaired driving DUI investigations there in Arkansas, just like Kyla does here in BC. And there's always that sense that it's a little bit traitory to be out there teaching the police. I wonder how clients get. And John is also very interesting because he's a pilot and he flies to the various jurisdictions where he conducts trials and has matters. I've known John for a long, long time. He's one of my favorite people ever. So welcome, John. Nice to see you.
Thank you. And you forgot to say that Kyla and you made me TikTok famous.
Well, that's the other thing, actually, I was thinking about beforehand, and I did just forget it. John is TikTok famous, and it's john.collins.lawyer or John.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
If you just search John Collins lawyer, he'll come up right away because he is absolutely TikTok famous. His TikToks are so entertaining. He puts a little bit more effort in than I do. Because he actually thinks about it more, and doesn't just do them from his car like me. He covers all sorts of topics. So he's got most recently ones about whether or not you can pull over and pee on the side of the road, whether or not you can shoot drones out of the sky, and lots about DUI and stuff. So anyway, yeah, you're TikTok famous. How's your TikTok fame holding up?
It's going well. It's going well. And I do want to say that for the listeners out there, Kyla and Paul are the ones that talked me into even getting on TikTok because I never even considered that I'm an old man. That's for young kids. I'm not going to do that. And y'all talked me into it, and I've been doing it for 2 years now. And I think I've got 84,000 followers on TikTok and 130,000 on Facebook and another 10 or 11,000 on Instagram. So it's going really well. I appreciate y'all getting me turned on to it.
Your TikToks are so informative and interesting, and I'm kind of sad because I was in a couple of your TikToks, and they were like the poorest performing ones you had. I was like, I'm bringing you down, man.
Not at all. Not at all. A lot of my listeners just weren't going to make it to Canada. So I think maybe the topic is
Yeah, I
what
know.
got them.
But your presentation and your delivery are so good, and you're so damn funny. I just wonder if you think about jokes beforehand or if they're just naturally coming out because it is high level entertaining.
Thank you.
Sometimes, John, I have to tell you, if you put longer ones on,
Mm-hmm.
I start them and I let them play to help me fall asleep. And I'm not kidding. I fall asleep to TikToks. I found it's the easiest way for me to fall asleep. I'm like gone.
Oh, I never thought I'd say that I am so excited to hear that you fall asleep thinking of me.
I've listened to my own and fallen asleep. But yes, you have featured in my dreams, and I actually had a dream about you the other day, and that was the reason that I thought about, oh my gosh,
Well, hang on, we'll save that for my OnlyFans.
yeah, it's not that kind of dream. Um, it was one of those exciting dreams, like where we're presenting together at a con.
I gotcha. Gotcha.
Nothing that quite that exciting. Anyway, there was a TikTok that you posted a little while ago, and it hit me because we were dealing with this issue at the office at the time, and that is, you got a client who's like guilty. You got breath readings. The readings are admissible. In the investigation, you've read the police report. The police report's tight. Maybe you've even got video, and if you've got bad video in a DUI case, that often there was a judge actually years ago who warned me, said, well, Mr. Doroshenko, because I was asking for the video. Said, it goes one of two ways, Mr. Doroshenko, when you get the video. I'm like, yeah, I know.
Believe me, we're aware.
It's the painful thing. But there are times when it looks like it's a totally sewn up case for the prosecution. And they will come to you and make you a plea offer.
Uh-huh.
And you're sitting there and you're thinking to yourself, why on earth would I accept that deal?
Yeah.
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 And so, like, what's the alternative?
Well, I mean, the alternative is go to trial.
Yeah.
And I have people ask that, why would you go to trial? And in more than one occasion, but in the occasion that led to that video that I made, the prosecutor gave me an offer, and it was a ridiculous offer. It was like days and days and days in jail, and at maximum fine. And I said, well, we're not going to do that. And she said, well, you don't have a choice. So I do. We'll just go to trial. And she said, well, you can't go to trial. He's guilty.
Fine.
Yeah. And so you can't go to trial. He's guilty. I can still go to trial. Well, you're not going to win. I said, I don't have to win. All I've got to do is beat your offer. And it's a shitty offer.
Yeah.
I should have asked, can I cuss on this?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, I wasn't
It's
sure.
not the Driving Law podcast if there's no swearing.
Okay. Okay. So, I told her I don't have to beat the case. I just have to beat the offer. And I can do that. And we did.
Yeah.
So, and as you know, I mean, that happens. Sometimes you get bad offers, and occasionally you'll get a bad offer, and I say that it's every case is a three-legged stool, because the officer has to do it right. They have to write it up right, do all the paperwork right, but then they have to testify about it right. And there are times when they meet prong one and prong two, but then the officer gets up there and you get them twisted and they're bumbling around and they're not talking right. And then they make some admissions that they didn't necessarily think they were going to make. And then the stool falls over. So I've won cases that I thought were unwinnable cases because an officer ended up making an admission on the stand that I wasn't expecting. One in particular, I had an officer that I said, "Officer, your report was really good." And it was another one where they offered me something that was ridiculous. And he said, "Thank you." I said, "In fact, it was one of the best reports I've ever seen." And he said, "Thank you." I said, "Some might even say it was perfect." He said, "Thank you." And that small hesitation, I thought, there is one more question. And so I said, "Some might say it's too perfect."
Right.
And he said, "Can I be honest with you?" And the judge said, "Well, you're under oath, so please be honest." And he
The
said,
judge
"My
said that.
supervisor," he
I
said,
said
"My
that.
sup," yeah. He said, "My supervisor wrote that report. He made me change my report." And so that led us down this rabbit hole of the entire case unraveled. I mean, the probable cause was completely made up by the supervisor. And ultimately, the supervisor, I don't know if y'all have Brady lists there or call them that, but if an officer gets caught being deceptive, they get put on a list, and the prosecutors have to turn over that deception to defense attorneys. And so the supervisor got put on the Brady list and ultimately got terminated for getting a subordinate to flat out lie so that he would have good probable cause for the arrest.
We see the same thing. We see the same thing. We have McNeil disclosure, but what we see more often is the person who's a sergeant, a corporal, somebody else, more superior officer, when we get their disclosure, what's called their McNeil disclosure, and find out what they've been in trouble for, they often will have the longest list of disclosure. And so they happen to be the ones who were at the scene but didn't conduct the investigation, and they never do because they're more senior and they're like, I'm not going to spend my time conducting this investigation.
Yeah.
They probably know how to conduct it properly, and you've got a junior who doesn't know how to conduct it. And then you've got them feeding that information. So it happens the same way. What we find is that when prosecutors are pushing us that way, and saying, "Look, your client's guilty. Why are we having a trial?" And then they will make us an offer that is above the mandatory minimum when we know we're going to get the mandatory minimum if we were to enter a plea or run a trial. Um, I'm usually thinking that there's something wrong with their case that they're not disclosing to me.
Right.
The police officer is very junior. The police officer's a lousy witness. Sometimes you get police officers who appear to be superstars and they take the witness stand and they're just the worst witness ever. They won't shut up. Or or every time you ask them a question, they nearly burst into tears.
Yep.
There's always unknown in those circumstances that is not disclosed. Is there 5 other trials on the list, and one of them has a child victim or something like that? So I'm sort of the view, like, I think that they get in their minds that we should be avoiding work.
Yeah.
That's part of the prosecutorial thinking. They want to avoid work, and the shortest distance between 2 points is a guilty plea.
Hmm.
I'm not always looking for the shortest distance.
No, well, I tell people that I like money and I can charge more money if I win, and you can't win if you plead guilty.
Yeah.
And so if I want other people to give me money and I want them to give me a lot of it, well, I need to win.
You tell the prosecutors that.
Yeah.
So are you allowed to charge more if you're successful?
No,
No,
no, no, no.
we can't
You're
either.
not allowed to
But the
charge
prosecutors
based
know
on
that.
the outcome.
Yeah.
I meant in general. I command a really, really, really high fee because I have a reputation for winning.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell them. I can't maintain a reputation for winning if I just plead everybody guilty.
Exactly.
So no, and especially not to shitty offers.
I'm just amazed at how different it can be when you go to court. You have no you've always got these ideas in your mind of how it's gonna go,
Mhm.
because that's how you're thinking through the file as you're reading the file, preparing, thinking about your cross-examination, what you're gonna cover. And then, you get to court, and of course, things always come out differently than you expect,
Yeah. Well,
and differently usually to your benefit.
yeah. Well, when I'm teaching at the law school, what I tell the students is, you know, every case you'll have 3 trials for that one case. You'll have the trial you prepare for, the trial that actually took place, and then the trial that you have on the way home in your mind saying, well, maybe I should have done this, or I could have asked it a little different. So every case I have those 3 trials, the one I got ready for, the one I had, and the one I have on the way home. Even when I win, I still think about, well, maybe I could have done this, or maybe I could have done that, or should I have done this? And I think that's part of caring about our clients because you and I have had these conversations before where we talk about and we go to these conferences and we talk about these cases. And I think that there's a lot of people that don't see that from us. They don't see what we're putting into it when we're not there. They don't see that we still share this concern about our clients um, long after the case is over.
Years ago, that those points that you just made, I remember you presenting at a lecture about that, and we talked about it afterward. Um, and maybe I'll circle back to it if I'm smart enough to remember it, but I just wanna get this point out while I'm thinking about it. Years ago, I remember, a lawyer telling me that your clients if you tell them that you worked hard to get the result at the end, or you appear to work too hard to get the result, that they actually won't have confidence in you. They'll think that the result just came and you were just lucky. It wasn't necessarily your hard work. And if you make it look easy and you tell them that it was easy all along, they seem to have less difficulty accepting the cost, paying the bill, and coming to terms with it if they think that you were a magician. And it's a frustrating thing because I think of the effort that we put in, the times that the things that we're going to seminars, discussing these things with our colleagues. You get a file and you've got something in there and you're hoping you spot everything. You're
Mhm.
hoping you spot everything and you don't know what you don't know. Little Donald Rumsfeld there.
Yeah.
Um, there's the known unknowns. That there's things you don't know, and if you were to give it to 50 other lawyers, they would all spot different things. Unfortunately, probably 45 of them would also spot a bunch of red herrings that you'd end up in pointless discussions going on for day after day.
Right.
Um, and then at the end, you're second guessing yourself. But we go through all of this effort to train ourselves, make sure that we're the best at it. Reading the file, going through it all of these times, and you'd like to be able to convey that to your client. the amount of effort and the amount of work and the amount of energy that you put in to get yourself to be as good as you can be doing this job. And then if you tell them that, they lose confidence in you.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I found is that it's sort of an even split with my clients, but a lot of them, um, they don't care how much work I put into it. All they care about is the result. But then there's others that they want, and the ones that just care about the result, they're not calling me every day. They're not bothering me. They're not emailing me. They're saying, "Tell me when to show up, and
And
I'll show up."
tell me how much money I need to pay.
Yeah. But then there's the other part where they want to manage me. They want to, "Hey, here's something I found on AI." Well, actually, they never ever say that. What they say is, "Hey, I had some ideas." I mean, "You didn't have any ideas. This is all AI. What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
Um, and it's usually wealth based. Well, they didn't read me my Miranda rights. Well, they didn't ask you any questions. They didn't need to read you your Miranda rights. But what I'm seeing now is people that actually, that set of clients, I spend more time telling them why their idea is wrong. And I mean, having to actually research it and say, "Look, I've been doing this 25 years. I've had all these cases. You're mistaken." "No, I'm not." And then I've got to actually go pull case law to show them that I'm right.
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
frustrating.
yeah, so we're uh, putting that in our fee agreement now that, you know, if they have AI generated questions, that we have to spend time researching, that will be an additional fee. That they can ask us legitimate questions out of concern, but if they argue with us, then there's an additional fee if we've got to pull research to show them they're wrong.
We're seeing that problem. Usually we can shut people down fairly quickly on those issues. The Miranda rights issue in Canada is so easy for us to explain.
Yeah.
But the one thing that we're seeing that is quite difficult is initial consultations by emails that are clearly AI written.
Yeah.
And what I've done a few times because I don't think it's ever going to end up being a client is I AI respond.
Yeah.
And I know they're gonna get their AI response, and I used AI to summarize their AI,
And then the two computers sit there and have a whole conversation.
and they're totally wrong every time. I do some tests actually with, in fact, for one that I had this morning, a hearing that I had this morning, I went on to Google Gemini and I said, "This is my scenario. This is what I've got, and this is what this is, the concern I've got." And it came back and it was not right. And it had relied on, Google Gemini tells you the sources that it's got.
Mhm.
Relied on a big firm, downtown Vancouver. I'm looking back up right now, a big firm, downtown Vancouver's website. I don't think they've ever conducted any of these
Yeah.
hearings.
Well,
And
and as you and I both know, a lot of the attorney websites out there, because I've seen the same thing where it's relying on attorney websites, but a lot of the attorney websites are put together by marketing people.
yeah,
And so they've optimized it for SEO and the attorneys didn't write it.
yeah.
So it's not even from those attorneys. It's from their marketing
And
department.
now it's just written by some AI.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's more garbage in, garbage out, and it's like the inbreeding of AI is going to lead to worse
That's
than
a good way. But being from Arkansas, I understand that analogy. So yeah, it's the inbreeding of
the yeah, the inbreeding with AI is just going to lead to it becoming less and less reliable. In Canada, the main reporting website is called Canley, and it's run by a university. Years ago, I started like the first online legal research called reasonsforjudgment.com. That was like 26 years ago. But then these guys came along and, of course, had resources to do something. But they're blocking all AI. And so it can't look up any case law. And so even if you were to ask it to give you case law, it'll just every time it'll dream it up. So it's
Yeah.
always hallucinating unless you click in there. And so it's come to the point where AI is just more wrong than right
Yeah.
when it comes to legal questions. But that is the frightening thing of technology, which brings me to the other thing I wanted to talk to you about. I know I asked you what you knew, and it seems you probably know the same things I know from TikTok, but that is these flock cameras that you guys have in the US.
Well, and so one of my frustrations with the flock cameras, and I guess we probably ought to, because y'all don't have it in Canada, right?
Well, we should explain what it is. So, we
Yeah.
have automatic license plate recognition in some police cars. And
Mhm.
it's been a controversial thing here because, the Victoria Police, about 10 years ago, unbeknownst to us, were like, in the city of Victoria, were capturing all that information, saving it all, and basically could monitor where everybody was at any given time. They had they had it for months. They never got rid of it. They was just like, and so they were confronted, and the police chief was, Jamie Graham. He used to be the police chief in Vancouver. I had some beef with him when he was the police chief in Vancouver, but I talked to him on the phone once, and he was very nice. And I know him now because he's also a member of the Volvo Club. He's a lovely guy, but he went on to be the police chief in Victoria, and he came out and said, "Yeah, we're just keeping this stuff in case we need it and giving it to the RCMP." And we're like, "Oh my gosh, all this private information that you're collecting." So now we have some fairly strict rules on it. But these flock cameras, tell me what you know. I'll tell you what I know.
Okay. I'll tell you what I know, and then I'll tell you my ideas on it. So, um, here in the US, we have been using license plate readers for a long, long, long time. And they were tied into a system called Epic, and it's the El Paso Information Center, which was a private company that collected all this data and then would essentially sell it to law enforcement, or, they would have a subscription to it. And that way, if your car was seen in Houston, Texas, and then was seen in Dallas, and then was seen in Little Rock, the police, not people, the police would know your path. They would know your travel date and time. They would know when you were seen, where you were seen. So you were seen at this Walmart. So an officer could go in and research. I am looking for a car that passes through Little Rock, Arkansas once a month after making a quick turnaround from Houston to someplace east of Little Rock. And so it would pop up with a list, and then they could look and see what those schedules were. And so they could time when we need to be looking for this particular car as a drug trafficker. And I had a very serious conversation with a state trooper about how that was kind of problematic to me because he said, "Well, we're just looking for people with quick turnarounds. They go down, they spend a day in Houston, and then they come back." And I said, "Well, my wife has cancer and she's going to MD Anderson, if you remember when she was going through that. And that's in Houston." And so at least once a month, I was driving down there on a Friday. My son and I would stay with my wife through the weekend, and then we would drive back once a month. And so I'm sure that my license popped up on that hit list.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's concerning. But Flock has taken it to a whole different level. So Flock is license plate readers on steroids, is my understanding. And they're everywhere. I mean, they got them up. If you
Solar
want,
powered.
yes, solar powered, connected, and it's a private company that owns the technology. And then police officers get a subscription. And so for law enforcement as a tool, as an ex-cop, I applaud it, I high five it if I were a police officer, because I know that I wouldn't misuse it. But as a former police officer, I saw officers use technology, even though there wasn't nearly as much of it back when I was a cop, in a way that was not appropriate or right. They used it to find young women that they were attracted to and find out where they lived. And then they'd go bump into them at the gym. And so now that this technology can actually map people, it's happening. We've already seen the instances of it. Um, and so that's my really big issue with Flock is not necessarily that they collect the information, But the police officers don't need warrants I mean, they literally need nothing to get it, Paul. They log into a computer and they say, I'm looking for a brown Toyota with a Episcopal high school sticker on the back
Yeah, they've
that
got
crosses through this location. Yeah,
capacity of the vehicle.
yeah, yes. And that's what we know about. And then you and I have had some conversations about Flock, and you had done some research. And so they had patents. And if you want to tell everybody what
Sure.
they're
So, I
doing
mean,
next,
I just say this is to me, it's terrifying, a terrifying intrusion into my privacy. And, we often in Canada, we think of Americans as the ones at the forefront of protecting privacy rights, but it feels like you guys are way behind on this one, as far as I'm concerned. Just automatic license plate recognition for identifying vehicles that might be stolen or a driver might be prohibited. I don't have any problem with that. It's just speeding up a police officer there from having to type that in when they're driving down the road. But we have the same problem. Like the Toronto police chief had to send out an internal video recently saying, look, if you can't abide by the rules, not use these systems we've got to be predatory of women, we don't want you here because this is a chronic problem.
Mhm.
And so that's just one of the examples, unanticipated examples of this type of technology. Now, Flock, as I understand it, is a company. They are called Flock, and they picked that name because I guess they're going to be everywhere uh, and cover, covering the community like the passenger pigeon once did. The units that are out there apparently have the technology already in them, patented by Flock, but not deployed, to be able to monitor Bluetooth signals.
Mhm.
So your Bluetooth signal as a signature, your Bluetooth signal in your phone, and your vehicle and your various different devices. My iPad, my laptop, all broadcasting a Bluetooth.
Your AirPod,
My
your
AirPod,
watch,
yep, and my AirTags that are in my car and my briefcase and my laptop case and my keys,
your pacemaker.
and we'll be able to associate it to your vehicle. Now, I have 13 vehicles or whatever stupid number that I just can't stop. I've got a chronic issue. Yeah, and we'll be able to associate it, and then we'll be able to see who you're associated with,
Yep.
who you travel with, whose
Mhm.
stuff you've got in your vehicle and
Right.
travel with.
So if I'm a police officer, who is my girlfriend traveling with?
Yep,
Who is she hanging out with?
yep,
Where was she last week while I was at work?
yep.
When I went to camp, where was she? So it's ripe for abuse. And it's funny because you said not deployed yet. We really don't know that. They're saying that. Um, but
Well, that's the
we
thing, it's a private company.
right.
It's a private company. It's not the disclosure obligations are not the same as with government. You know, we're
I don't
part.
know if you remember the Stingray systems. The Stingray system was basically a fake cell tower that law enforcement would carry with them. And so it was something that they would go park in an area and it would gather all of this information from cell phones because the cell phones would connect to it, believing it was a cell phone tower. It mimicked a tower. And that way they could find out what phones were in the area and then they could pick phones to listen in on and different things. But that was around for years without anybody knowing because they did what's called a dual investigation file, where the police kept one file internally, turned over this other file to the prosecutor that would then be turned over to the defense.
You're
And so
forgetting
prosecutors and courts didn't know that this technology was being used. And then it slowly started coming out and they put a stop to it for the most part, supposedly. But in America here, we have had a huge problem of regulating new technology because it's got to work its way through the courts. So what law enforcement has
I
found
mean,
out,
sometimes there's legislation, and sometimes the legislation has to work its way through the court. Sometimes there's no legislation, and it's just an issue of, like, the constitutional validity.
yeah, yep. Well, and when law enforcement is trying to keep the technology secretive
Right.
as far as what its true capabilities are, when they do that, Um, it can be years before. So our legislature here only meets every 2 years. And so they meet every 2 years, and that's when they pass laws. But then you've got a huge police lobby, and nobody wants to go against the police. So most of the times, these things aren't fixed legislatively, they've fixed to the court. But to go to the court, the defense attorney has to, number one, know that it exists, know that it was used in this case. And so many times they will list in the reports that this technology was used. They'll use it to get enough information to work the case up without mentioning the
Yeah.
flaws. And
Yeah.
so it's a problem. And it's funny. Um, and I know Kyle would really get a kick out of this, but I know you will enough think you will too. It is always the male officers that are getting in trouble for these stalking behaviors. We don't have a lot of women police officers that are stalking men. And so
I think about this all the time. I think about this all the time. It's just I mean, it's not just this, but there's all sorts of things that I see every day. Things that women point out on TikTok, the entire Epstein files. I mean, all of this just sort of,
all of it.
yeah, a level of creepiness that makes me so uncomfortable about the concept of men.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I recognize that there are women who do some horrible things. I've had some clients who, I've known enough women who did horrible things, but not this level of creepy, like,
Right.
and exploiting their position for the purpose of this.
Well, and not recognizing the problem with it.
Yeah.
Not recognizing that they shouldn't track a woman's movements so that they can accidentally bump into her and have small talk.
I'm just amazed that these people are not capable of correcting their own thought process to get there.
Yeah.
If I have some thought of something that's wrong for whatever reason that I'm attracted to or the idea of, I can usually, within a minute or so, I'll be like, okay, well, I shouldn't even be thinking about that. Let's
Yeah.
get serious here.
Well, so
Just like some
different
people seem incapable of that.
different agencies will have different rules for how their flock can be accessed. But what's funny is what we're seeing here is that a lot of the flock access is not coming from the actual agency that is in control of that section. So, for example, here in Little Rock, we may have someone from Illinois reach out to us and say, I need information on this. Um, but I could also, as a Little Rock officer, call down to a neighboring city and say, hey, our flock cameras don't cover this area that's in your city. Could you give me information? And because they're trusting of other officers, all they really need is that request. I was talking to a police officer yesterday, and that's exactly what he was telling me. Is he said, "Well, with all this hoopla with the flock cameras, they're your cell phone has all that same tracking ability." And I said, "Yeah, but you have to have warrants to access that." I said, "How do you access flock?" He says, "Well, I sit down at the computer and we have to keep a log." I said, "What kind of log?" He said, "Well, we write it down. I'm researching this vehicle for this reason." I said, "But what's an acceptable reason?" And he said, "Well, any law enforcement purpose. It can't be for personal use." And I said, "Well, what did you write down on your last flock?" He said, "Well, I put it's for law enforcement purpose."
Yeah.
And I said, "If I went back and asked you why you looked at this car 2 months ago, would you be able to tell me?" Well, I'd look at the log and it would say for law enforcement purpose. So his agency, that's all they had to do. And so we really don't have any control over how people are accessing these records. And they are helpful. I mean, if you look at the pros and the cons, there are many, many times they have quickly caught some really bad people using these cameras. But
You couldn't dispose of a body these days without getting caught.
right,
You know,
right.
your Bluetooth in your vehicle, even if you leave your cell phone at home.
Yeah. I had a hit and run where they used the entertainment system to track her. And now that ended up helping us because the entertainment center showed that she actually stopped, turned around, went back because she knew she hit something. She just couldn't find anybody. Um, but I mean, it was a big deal. They were using the infotainment center and its connections, not her cell phone.
It's frightening. I mean, it's a private company, and you wonder what the people who work at Flock are accessing
Mhm.
to stalk women. But we all anticipated that this would be, big government doing it. And what we're seeing instead is it's corporations that have figured out the technology and that they can sell this product to government that's willing to use it.
Well, and the government gets to hide behind it and say that we don't have access to what you want because that's a private company. And then private companies get to say, well, we're a private company. We're not a government entity. You cannot get it from us in that way. And so they're setting it up to kind of insulate each other.
Well, it's the
Instead
same
of
argument they made for years about source code
Mhm.
on breath testing equipment.
Exactly. Exactly.
And they're successful with it. It's it's one of those creepy things where you've got the catch-22 as a lawyer. You know that there's a problem there because you can see it. You can't get that information because it's somebody else's information, and nobody's going to compel them to disclose it. And they will do everything they can to obscure it or make it unusable for you in any event.
Yeah.
And the government will take advantage of it. The thing that I found sort of quite enlightening over the last decade is that, we go to conferences and so do they.
Yeah.
So there are DMV conferences, for example, and
Yep.
we are now facing the province of Saskatchewan bringing in a roadside breath testing, roadside punishment scheme, similar to British Columbia's, but with some changes where we've had constitutional friction. They're making some changes so they'll have less, and they learn all of these things not by talking to us, not by talking to police officers, not through court decisions, because the court decisions are not out there that explain it, but
Mhm.
through essentially, like, their conferences where they essentially collude for their plan.
Right.
Teaching each other stuff, but we're
Right.
very rarely are we colluding, although there's, sometimes there's people who are working together on various projects, but this is the direction of things. It's kind of
Yeah. Yeah. It is. It's very disheartening. And I mean, but for me, it's like that with a lot of the technology because we have now where people are getting, if you get arrested, your picture gets put on the internet.
yeah.
And I mean, it goes up within hours on the internet. And then trying to get that taken off, we don't have any rules for it. And so we actually have rules where there are certain times where even if convicted, you can get that removed from your record, an expungement or a petition to sue. And so you can get it removed from your record. But
Is
because
yeah.
it's a private company that has that information up on their website, we don't have any rules to force them to take it down. And if you're found not guilty, they still get to keep it up that you were arrested for that charge. So it's incredibly frustrating.
It's very stigmatizing, and I feel sorry for people in those circumstances. What we found, or what I've noticed over the course of my career, is that the media will be so heavily invested in the arrest, and never follow the rest of the story. And so you might run the thing, get an acquittal. It might be just an absolute blowout. The
Mhm.
person was factually innocent and innocent in all respects, and you actually, had you been there sitting through the trial, you would have had a great deal of sympathy for them and would be so upset at the police having conducted the investigation the way they did, and yet none of that will ever make it in the news.
Yeah.
The only
Yeah.
thing that's there is that person's arrest news story that anybody can Google 18 years later. It'll still show up
Right.
somewhere.
Right. Super frustrating. Wish they would keep up with the technology.
Yep. Well, it's somewhat ridiculous, but this is where we are. And that brings us probably to the ridiculous driver of the week. Now, the ridiculous driver of the week is not normally sponsored by something, but seeing as Kyla's not here this week, the ridiculous driver of the week is sponsored by Fast Start 104. Yes, Fast Start 104. That is 104 proof alcohol made in our distillery. Kyla should be supportive of this because she is one of the owners of the distillery. And this is the same fast start your father used and your grandfather used to get a fast start. It's 52% alcohol, so that's like a drink and a half.
Makes me wish I was a drinker.
I know you're not a drinker, but there was a time. The we've actually started selling mini bottles and, because it's, an easy way for people to try our products. It's been really good for getting our products out there because people buy it and then they like it so much. Our chief distiller, developed some of the most popular brands that are out there, every bottle, he was let go when Labatt's bought the place that he was working at. So every bottle that he produces, there's a little bit of spite in every bottle.
And what goes better with alcohol than spite, right?
Exactly. If it's controlled. So, ridiculous driver of the week. Every time that we have a ridiculous driver of the week, and yeah, very often for a long time, our ridiculous drivers were all from Florida because those are published stories all the time. We didn't have many from your neck of the woods. This week we've got another one from our neck of the woods, and it's um, uh, ridiculous for sad reasons. So, John, I can tell you we had one guy who had a full turntable set up in his big truck in Washington State, and he was mixing music while driving. That was a great one. Another guy who had managed to get a snowmobile on the roof of a Crown Victoria and was seen speeding at like 140 kilometers an hour on Vancouver Island. That was a great one. This one is distressing for some reasons. So it was on the Sea to Sky Highway just a couple of days ago. A young woman pulled over. She's a learner driver, so she's got a L. She's got to have a supervisor there, and she was driving on the Sea to Sky Highway on a motorcycle, caught driving 177 kilometers an hour in an 80 zone, so about 60 miles an hour over the limit on a motorcycle. And that is ridiculous. But the worst part of it is, like 1 week before, almost to the date, a woman died on a motorcycle accident speeding on the Sea to Sky Highway, and the highway was closed, for, 8 to 10 hours while the police investigated. It was also an investigation of the police conduct in that case because they had, taken chase after this young woman. So that's, one woman caught going nearly 180 and, another woman who, died on a motorcycle on that highway. People go onto that highway thinking that it's a recreational road, and it's like a challenge of how fast you can go. And, there's all these other people who are out there just, wanting to go up to Whistler.
Yeah.
This is a highway that starts just basically at Vancouver, West Vancouver, and goes, as it is described, sea to sky, and it ends up at Whistler, and it's windy, and it's often very busy. And, if you were there on a, Tuesday morning in October, if it was lovely and dry, it would probably be pretty safe to drive some higher speeds. But this is a learner driver. And so she certainly deserves the ridiculous driver of the week for this week.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that too. Young people driving outrageously fast. And of course, one of the things I always liked about you, Paul, is your love of classic cars. And of course, some of the younger people, when I talk to them about classic cars, they start talking about cars that were, built in the 1990s. And I'm like,
Like
what?
2008 Acura NSX,
Yeah.
something like that.
But, I had a 79 Z28 with a, Muncie 4-speed, which doesn't mean much to many people, but it would to you.
Yep.
It had the 350 with a 4-barrel carburetor. And if it was pushing 300 horsepower, then that was a lot. And it was a sports car.
Yeah.
And back then, we thought, man, that was fast.
Probably top out at 135 miles an hour.
Yeah, yeah. And now they've got, 6 cylinders, the Pennstar 6-cylinder that they put in the Cadillacs and that come in the 6-cylinder Dodge Chargers. Uh, then you throw up the Hemi on the Dodge Charger. Some of these, you know, 800, 900 horsepower, easily, easily 140 miles per hour, not kilometers, but miles per hour, 150 miles per hour.
Much faster than that.
Yeah. Well, that's
Much
that's
faster
what I
than
commonly see them driving, just driving.
Yeah.
And that's not even getting chased yet. And it's ridiculous because Well, number one, I don't care how much experience you have. Our roads aren't built for that. Um, you need a closed track to do that kind of driving.
Well, you can't anticipate things happening,
No.
um, because, your brain can't handle it.
Mm.
Your brain can't respond fast enough, and then you've got, traffic lights.
Well,
People
and you're
going
traveling 1 mile for 30 sec I mean, in 30 seconds, you're traveling 1 mile,
Yeah.
going 120 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And so, 150, 160, I mean, it's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I am look at the limits to your freedom when it comes to them collecting information, about us, and, we're not, the government isn't protecting us there. Um, they certainly don't wanna protect the limits to the freedom of your freedom to be able to take your car that you can't lawfully drive anywhere beyond 75 miles an hour and put any limit on that.
Right.
I
That's just like the drinking, right? The hospitality industry would never say, "Hey, no detectable amount of alcohol," because how much would they lose on alcohol sales at restaurants?
Yeah.
I mean, no one's gonna suggest that.
Well, alcohol sales are down. Um, Overall, probably because of GLP-1s. They
Yeah.
hope it's because of young people, but I think it's GLP-1s are probably the main issue. But it hasn't stopped people speeding. And every summer, I think to myself, partway through the summer, that this is going to be the worst summer for motorcycle deaths in this province. And every summer, I'm it exceeds it.
Yeah.
We've seen a bunch of them already, and I just am I would never, ever, ever ride a motorcycle again. I had an aunt who was an ER nurse, and she made me make that promise, and I sort of half did to her when I was younger. And now that I've done this job for 27 years, and closely, watched what's going on out there, there's one thing I would never do, and I would never get on a motorcycle.
Well, I've got a motorcycle endorsement, and for years and years and years, rode a motorcycle well into my adulthood. But the older I get, the more cautious I get because, like you, I've seen many, many, many uh, horrific deaths.
Even careful people,
Motorcycles.
like even careful people get hit by
Yeah,
by drivers who just didn't see them.
yeah, absolutely. And well, here, and I'm sure there too, we have a lot of wildlife,
Yeah,
and Arkansas is very rural. And so I've lost a friend that hit a deer.
yeah, yeah. No, it's not uncommon. And I've had so many close calls driving our Ford Aero, whatever transit van for a distillery with moose, deer, you name it. And if I was
Yeah,
on a motor,
moose is a little bit bigger than a deer.
but black bears, yeah, I hit a black bear once with my TR6. Yeah, it's just there's all those things that you cannot anticipate, and you're on a motorcycle, you got nothing around you to protect you. But in any event, that's, I guess we could get onto that for another topic for another day. John, thank you so much
Absolutely. Thank you
coming
for having.
on short notice, and I appreciate it, and we should do it again.
Absolutely.
Um, it was great. So, join us next week for another exciting episode of Driving Law with Kyla Lee. I'm Paul Doroshenko, and bye bye.
Bye bye. Thanks, Paul.